This video is brought to you by MagicJank.com, the spiciest cards for your sauciest decks. Buy and sell Magic the Gathering products and gear today on MagicJank.com. What is up, Janksters? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet. Today I wanted to touch on a news story that broke a few days ago that I think is really exciting. Wizards has decided to errata a number of cards so that they actually include keyword abilities. And the two that they confirmed specifically were Surveil as well as Landfall. Now, with Landfall, it's kind of a flavor word that doesn't usually impact the card very much. However, if you're building a deck and using sites like Scryfall or Gatherer to find cards that are relevant for that deck, you can now type in the word Landfall as a general text search and it will find these cards for you, which is pretty nice. So in the case of cards like Tireless Tracker, for example, it doesn't have Landfall in it currently. You can't find a printed card of Tireless Tracker that has Landfall. However, if they were to reprint Tireless Tracker in the future, it will have the word Landfall printed on the art, or on the text box rather. And it does now officially have Landfall, which is kind of cool. So it's neat. There isn't, I don't believe there are any effects that specifically say if a Landfall ability triggers do a thing. It's all when a land enters do a thing. So in this situation, Tireless Tracker now has Landfall. It kind of always did, so they're calling it what it is. I appreciate that. Now, the reason that I had Sinister Sabotage up here is because Surveil actually is a situation that's a bit different, because we have a number of cards that have Surveil that do care about every time a Surveil action occurs in order to trigger them. So if you're not familiar with Surveil, Sinister Sabotage is a card that does have Surveil. Always has, always will. It's a counterspell that has Surveil 1 tacked to it. When you Surveil, you look at the top X cards of your library, where X is the number associated with Surveil. In this case, you Surveil 1. So you look at the top card. You have the opportunity to then either leave that card right where it is so that you will draw it later, presumably, or you can put it into your graveyard. This is kind of a twist on Scry, where instead of going to the bottom of the deck, it goes to the yard. So if you have specific cards that you want in your graveyard, having Surveil as a way to kind of help you get them where they need to go, while kind of sorting out your draws, is really useful. Like Reanimator style strategies, or decks that have a lot of flashback or interaction with graveyard tech, Sinister Sabotage or other Surveil cards are great for that. And notice there are a number of cards that actually have this ability where it wasn't keyworded Surveil. One example is Otherworldly Gaze. So this text box is fairly long. It says, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put any number of them into your graveyard and the rest back on top of your library in any order. You know the new text box on this after this errata? Surveil 3. That's it. Well, then flashback. But yeah, it's very clean, very simple, and it's exactly what it's doing. Now, that's cool, because it's simple, it's clean. They're accepting the fact that Surveil is a mechanic that they want to reuse over and over again. So they're just printing it. They're making it evergreen. They're making the change. The reason that that's particularly useful, also, by the way, another great example of this is Search for Escanta. This actually has you Surveil 1 at the beginning of every turn. And it will now say at the beginning of your upkeep, Surveil 1. That's pretty darn cool. And keep these in mind, because these tools all of a sudden open up a potential archetype that you might find in older formats that probably isn't going to be like tier 1. Like, I would be shocked if we're talking about any of these taking down like a GP or something later. Like, I'd be absolutely flabbergasted. However, they exist, and they were relegated to like a draft archetype in our most recent trip to Ravnica. But with these buffs and with new cards theoretically being printed in the future, I hope. It sounds like that's going to be the case. We're going to have new Surveil cards in the future. All of a sudden, these older payoff cards might actually pop off. And so, for example, we have Dimir Spybug. Dimir Spybug is a 1/2 for blue and a black with flying and menace. So, really tough to block. Whenever you Surveil, you put a +1/+1 counter on Dimir Spybug. So all of a sudden, if you have Search for Escanta down, you're surveilling every single turn. You have cards like Otherworldly Gaze that allows you to Surveil for 1. You have Consider is another card that is just a quick instant for 1 that now has Surveil on it where it didn't before. All of a sudden, getting a pretty big Spybug down, it's reasonable. That's not hard to do. Now, it's worth noting that Dimir Spybug is only legal in formats that also have cards like Fatal Push, so be aware of that. But at the end of the day, it could work. This could be a viable archetype. There's also another one, Thoughtbound Phantasm. I want to put this on people's radar because it is similar to Dimir Spybug, but it's not flying. Instead it has Defender, but it starts as a 2/2. And whenever you Surveil, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, and as long as it has 3 or more +1/+1 counters on it, it can attack as though it didn't have Defender. I've actually found this thing fits really nicely on a lot of curves, and when you start a game with a 2/2 defender online on turn 1, it slows down a lot of aggro pressure, and then it grows. It can grow as quickly to like a 4/4 by turn 2, and you can be swinging with a 5/5 or more by turn 3 fairly consistently, especially now that we have all these low-cost Surveil cards. So I honestly think cards like Thoughtbound Phantasm might actually have a home in some interesting Dimir shells in the future because of this. I'm very intrigued. What we really need is nice cheap removal that has Surveil on it. That's something that we don't quite have yet. Closest we have is Eat to Extinction, which is like a cool card, but it's a little slow. It costs 4. Now it does have, you know, it is an instant and it exiles. Exile target creature, planeswalker, then Surveil 1. You know, that's going to be the new text. This is another one that was impacted by the change. So decent, like it does the job, but if you're trying to get the Thoughtbound Phantasm going, waiting till turn 4 to be removing threats, it's just one at a time, no less, is just not quite there. But you get a nice close-up on Crox's face, and it's terrifying. So I wouldn't recommend thinking about that too hard when you're trying to fall asleep tonight. But in any event, thank you so much for checking out the video. I appreciate it very, very much. I hope you're having a phenomenal day, and I'll catch you on the next one.